Welcome to the Drivable Podcast, where we discuss all things about driving and safer community transport for people with disabilities and medical conditions. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you go back and listen to the last episode. In that last episode, we interviewed Matt, and we're going to discuss him today. We talked about his journey into his life and learning how he drives with hand controls.
This is episode 11, where we reflect on Matt's story and his journey. Thanks for joining us. And are you ready for this, Brad?
Yeah, let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
Driving is something many take for granted, but when someone has altered ability, then driving or getting out and about in your own car can be challenging. Driving with a disability doesn't mean you have to drive an old clapped out car with farm-like machinery, and relying on a wheelchair doesn't mean waiting for hours and then being in the back of a maxi access cab getting car sick. The Drivable Podcast is designed to introduce and explore driving aids for people with disabilities, vehicle modifications, the NDIS, research, medical guidelines, driving techniques, and much, much more. The Drivable Podcast is to help you be informed and be in control of your own independence so you can experience freedom through driving safely and reliably. I'm Ali, and with me is Brad, and together we have over 30 years of experience in disability and driving. Enough of the intros, let's get into it.
Okay, in this episode, we are reflecting on the last one where we interviewed Matt Caruana and his journey all around driving and revitalizing himself as a new person. Definitely an inspiring story. Definitely someone I reckon we'll be seeing in the future more of on a bigger scale, national and even international. He was a great guy to talk to. And yeah, Brad, how great was that guy? What a great attitude.
Yeah, mate, I've got his Instagram account open next to us here. Matt Shares, if you want to go and look it up, MATTSHARES on Instagram. And you can just look at his photos on there and see what an engaging guy he is for all the people that he's talking to nowadays. He got us engaged as well, didn't he?
Yeah. And it was really interesting, I guess. I like his tagline, Matt Shares, because one of the key points I thought from that discussion was once he started sharing his story, that's when he could really start rehabilitating, in multiple ways. First of all, his mental state, but then also sharing his issues and so on meant he could start properly gaining support,
Yeah, wasn't that interesting how once he'd made that switch in his brain, then everything else came together as well. And,
I thought that was really, really interesting. And I guess as we discussed, it's previous to when we started, it's definitely a bit of a common theme we're seeing. Like people that are either, in a dark part of their lives or struggling with something mentally, which so many of us do. And probably most of us go through these periods. And many of us probably escape unscathed from these sort of, bad periods or bad choices we make. And some people tend to end up, having more bigger impacts from their bad choices, I guess, lifelong impacts. But what's interesting is all of these guys that we've interviewed so far, they've turned it around and actually seen the light in that, and they've seen where they can, I guess, contribute to the community rather than take from the community. And that's awesome.
Yeah, well, they've been through hell. The three people that come to mind that we've interviewed so far is Qua, who's had his legs amputated through a car accident and is now a motivational speaker. We've got Matt, who we've just done in the last episode, and he's also using his story of attempted suicide to try and motivate others to avoid the troubles that he went through. And then there was Eli as well, who's now talking about his car accident and trying to help youth in schools to try and not go through the same journey that he went through. And there's a common thread through each of their stories about how they've taken their misfortune or their difficult period in their life and turn that around. And I wonder I reflect on this. I wonder what would have happened if their disabilities weren't so significant, or if they went through this and came out the other side without a disability. I wonder where their life would be like at the moment.
Yeah, it's really interesting, I guess, because another thing that we somewhat discussed just before is, I think that, I guess, so in as just to bring everyone up to speed, I broke my foot in the last week.
Yeah.
And I've been living a little bit of a disabled lifestyle in the last week. And every time I go through these situations of physical, I guess, ailments that hold me back, I guess I'm very grateful for the industry that we're in, because I can always, I guess, tune into the stories that I hear on to give me that strength. And one thing which I've really noticed, particularly in the last week, is the speed at which everything moves in society. Everybody, everything, the way we talk, the way we interact, the way we do everything moves very, very fast. And once you have some kind of disability or physical disability, it's just not possible for you to move at the same speed as everybody else. And so what I found in my own experience was I've kind of had to search for something else, because if I'm tuning into the life as it normally was, I'm just feeling overwhelmed all the time, because everything's moving, everyone's schools, but I'm having to wake up later. It's taking me, probably about 50% longer to get ready. But I need more rest, because I need to rest myself. So I'm waking up later, but I'm also needing more time to get ready. So I'm getting to work a bit later. I'm having to take my kids to school. All of this stuff is just taking so much extra time. But the rest of society is not slowing down for me. So if I don't search for that better meaning, I think I'm going to find it very, very difficult to interact with the rest of society, So yeah, I think that's probably got something to do with it. And I had difficulty myself experiencing that. So I've tasted a little bit of it, nowhere near what these guys do. But yeah, it's been interesting. And I guess for him, it was also interesting, having that kind of, like, it seemed like his rehab was quite a journey, by both mental and physical. And he's still going through that journey and sharing a lot about it. But I guess to focus on, I guess, the rehab part and the driving part, it was quite an interesting story, because one thing that was different with him compared to the other stories we heard was he seemed to not get as many options, in the whole sense, as in, like, he woke up in a hospital bed, and then it was kind of like, you got to do this and you got to do that and you got to rehabilitate this way and you're in this facility and this is all the stuff we had. And he just went along with the ride. He didn't really get many other options in many senses of the word.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that's an age thing as well. And, he was a young person when he had the injuries. And I wonder if that's a period in his life where he accepted more. And with a little bit more age, maybe in your 20s or 30s, then you are able to reflect on life a little bit more and able to ask more questions. But when he was 16, maybe he was being told a little bit more. I'm not too sure. We weren't in his shoes, of course. So we weren't in his situation.
I mean, being younger seems to be, just from my observation, people seem to be able to be more flexible in the way that they're thinking. And I guess, as you said, when you're a kid, also, I actually saw something interesting not that long ago about how kids are raised. They're basically told what to do all the time. And that's kind of how they're raised, which is fair enough. And then we kind of, at some point in their life, switch that off and say, all right, now you're an adult. No one's going to tell you what to do. And the next day, they're all of a sudden going, okay, but everyone was telling me what to do from yesterday, and now today they don't. So what am I supposed to do?
That magical 18th birthday, magical 18th birthday, when all of a sudden you're an adult, and all the world is now your responsibility.
Yeah, so maybe the mindset, as you said, is much more open to just going, all right, well, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is how I'm supposed to rehab. This is the products that I'm supposed to have, and I'll just do it, And I guess also, because he didn't also, like, I guess what I was reflecting on was he was in this one-stop shop facility, if you'd like. And that sounds like a great facility. It was like a rehab facility. And it's great that it's got one-stop shop, but it sounded like it can be limited because they're trying to be one-stop shop, but there's more than one piece of equipment that you can have in a car, right? So a one-stop shop in this industry could have some limitations, you know?
Well, we get that all the time. I don't know about where you are there, Ali, but the amount of people that come into, even the older clients that come in and want to transfer modifications from their existing car into their new car. And sometimes it doesn't fit and we have to go exploring new hand controls. They're just not aware that all of these products are available and there's more than one type of hand control. And all of these differences in hand controls, the little subtle variations can make a massive difference to somebody's function inside the car, whether it's comfort or pain or safety and appropriate driving. Many elements are available to people to get that best possible outcome.
Yeah, I mean, just here we've got like a whole assessment center of different variations of hand controls, and driving controls in particular. They pretty much all of them are customizable to an extent. So you've got hundreds and hundreds of different types of hand controls on the market, and then within those, each one of those types, each one of them can be customized to an extent to suit. So there really shouldn't be any kind of compromise in that area. And one thing I was actually thinking on when I was reflecting on Matt's story, and I guess knowing Matt, and as I said, I've worked out with Matt, he's extremely strong. So like he's
those shoulders of his, they're huge.
Like
those
he's a
shoulders.
beast. You know, like I can't do, like I can maybe do like 1 or 2 pull-ups. And I went and did a workout with him, and he sits in his wheelchair, he grabs a rope, he climbs up the rope with no legs onto the pull-up bar, and then starts doing 10, 15 pull-ups and then climbs back down, you know? And so, and I guess one thing I was thinking was, I wonder if his strength is hiding the mobility, and it might catch up with him in the long term. So what I mean by that is, so for with myself, one of the things I like to do, is Olympic weightlifting. So they clean it jerks, snatches, and all that kind of stuff. And with that kind of weightlifting, it's really interesting because it's very much technique based, and all the angles have to be the right angle. Mm-hmm. But what I found is you can actually hide away from technique with strength. So if you're really strong, you can just pull the bar up, pull the weight up. But at some point, it catches up with you if you're not using that right technique, and you will hurt yourself if you've done too many reps or if you've done too many bits and pieces, you know. So there is a big loud beeping noise in the background. There's a truck reversing, so I'm sorry about that.
Oh, you're in your workshops and we can see the products behind you for the people that tune in on YouTube. So look, I can reflect on that as well. I did my ACL last year. Some people might have seen some videos I did about hand controls and so forth when I did bust my ACL last year. And I reflected on my short-lived disability at that stage. But what we were talking about at that period is, I can reflect on exactly what you're talking about. It's, from me, now working with my physio, my injury has come from years of not doing squats properly. My hips rotate inwards as I do my squats, and my knees slightly roll inwards. And what that was doing was slightly weakening my meniscal ligament, and not my meniscal ligament, my medial ligament, and had a meniscal tear. So that medial ligament was getting floppy because of the way that I was doing squats. And that's probably led to an unstable knee. So when I did land incorrectly, the whole thing gave way. And that's from years of doing squats in a slightly inappropriate way. And we've really got to reflect as therapists and people putting in hand controls like yourself, Ali, in the modifying world. these ergonomics, these functions of how the body actually works in a strongest, most repeatable pattern, which isn't going to cause injury.
Yeah. I mean, like, look, I guess I question with Matt's situation whether, first of all, I mean, it might sound a bit controversial. Did the therapist do their job properly? Because he's only used one hand control, from what he said. He's just used that one, and he's gotten used to it. And look, it could by some chance be exactly the right thing. But I guess my concern is, in the long term, let's say he's using this hand control and it's not exactly the right, like the therapist hasn't measured the angles or whatever it is, like whatever they need to be doing, the functionality of it the right way. Maybe when he's 35 and 40, he's going to potentially have major issues when all of this stuff over the long term is going to catch up with him, because it hasn't been assessed when he was young, and so that was the interesting thing I was thinking of, because when we asked him, what did you think? Like, how did you find it? And he had no problem, he was like, yeah, everything's fine, but it was sounded like he was a little bit kind of oblivious to it, and that was a flag to me, because I thought, what's that going to look like in 10 years, in 15 years? Is he still going to be saying the same? And has it been fully assessed properly, or was it just like, oh, well, this is what we had in our car? Because that's kind of what he was saying. That's the car they had, and that's the hand control they had, and so that's what I used.
Yeah. Well, and anyone that's been following my social channel for a while, Williams OT, they will get sick of me talking about right hand side hand controls versus left hand side hand controls in regards to the camber of the road. His push-pull hand controls would be on the right-hand side. I don't think we discussed that last week, but traditional push-pull hand controls that he's got will be on the right-hand side of the steering wheel, where your key goes in, the traditional key goes in, and his spinner knob, if he's using a spinner knob, will be on the left-hand side. There's so many stories about people taking the spinner knob off, because if you set the spinner knob if you imagine your steering wheel as a clock, and your spinner knob goes on at between 9 and 10 o'clock, and these days with the steering wheels becoming a bit fatter and you've got the thumb rests on there, it kind of goes up to about 11 o'clock. If you imagine your steering wheel as a clock face, that's really fatiguing for the left shoulder. Extremely fatiguing for the left shoulder to push against the camber of the road all the time. The road's got a slope in it. It's if you ever go to a footy match and you sit down at boundary level, you can't see the other side of the oval. It's humped in the middle. It's a slight hill. Well, the roads are exactly the same, and it's for water runoff. And the middle of the road is higher than the gutters on the outer sides of the roads, and the road slopes in Australia to the left. And if you put a spinner knob on the left-hand side, then you're constantly pushing up against the hill, and the amount of fatigue that goes into the left shoulder, into your anterior deltoid and also your pecs, and to keep that steering wheel up against the slope of the road. If you're a driver and you're listening to this, and maybe you're listening to yourself, listening to this in a car right now, if you take a hand off the steering wheel, I bet, and I can put money on this, more often than not, you will take your left hand off the steering wheel. You'll rest it on the handbrake or on the gear lever, or hold a cup in your left hand. Hopefully not holding your phone in your left hand or anything else like that that's distracting, but you'll take your left hand off the steering wheel, and your right hand will be the dominant steerer. And that, from my experience, is all to do with the camber of the road. Why would we put a spinner knob then in the left hand, which is not our dominant steering hand? And that's the question that I pose to everybody.
Yeah.
The follow on from that is, what hand controls are in driving instructors' cars? And most driving instructors, in my experience, have hand controls on the right-hand side of the steering wheel and a spinner knob on the left. It's very rare. There's a few out there that have hand controls on the left-hand side, so you can get that comparison.
What's interesting also, what you were saying about that spinner knob, is that also happening with the hand control at the same time? Because when you're accelerating, you're basically pulling back and holding that shoulder in tension, right? The whole time. So if you've got this shoulder intention like that and that shoulder intention like that,
how fatiguing is that?
Yeah, I mean, a long trip's going to be pretty much impossible. But then, as I said, like, yeah, one trip down the shops for 10 minutes is fine, but do that every day for 10 years, that's hours upon hours upon hours upon, like, it's hundreds of hours of incorrect movement and fatigue, you know. So, and that's kind of my problem is yeah, look, he's a strong guy, he's a pretty proud guy, you know, he's a driven guy, and he's like, yeah, I can do that, I can do it, and I'm a I can do it kind of guy, and that's cool for maybe like one challenge or one drive or one thing, but for a long-term solution, yeah, we need to look at everything. We need to look at the whole thing from a long-term basis, not like, hey, this worked, I ticked that box, let me put in for the funding and away I go, and you know, do the kind of cookie cutter approach. It's something that kind of has a little bit of a bee in my bonnet about it, and I guess it's quite interesting because we've got quite a big assessment facility of so many hand controls, and as Matt just explained, he's come here. And when he came here, he was completely blown away. It was quite interesting to me, that experience. I've never actually really had that experience. So normally when we go and do presentations to therapists, or we do presentations to hospitals, to the non-disability community, basically, they're always wowed by these products. You know what I mean? They're like, oh my God, this, I've never seen a hand control like this, or I've never seen a seat like that, and so on, you know. But generally speaking, when we're dealing with the disability community, they're not as wowed because they've got more exposure to products like that. You know what I mean? So it might be just it's not like we're showing them fire for the first time. It's kind of like, okay, this is another version of that. But what was interesting when Matt came here, it was like I was showing someone fire for the first time. He was like, what's all this stuff, you know? And I'm like, these are hand controls. And he goes, what? I've never even seen anything like this before, you know? And I was just completely shocked, because for someone who's, what I found is people that do use those kind of controls, they've got some kind of idea of what else is on the market, and they've got some kind of idea, but he had absolutely no idea. And he was using all these different things, and he was like, oh my God, this is really good. And if I had this product, and I think, and he tried a few different things, and he actually realized that one particular one, he reckons would have been a lot better for his particular need, which was, I think it was like a little hand control with a slider accelerator on the thumb. So, and again, he kind of was saying that holding that accelerator, I think, can be fatiguing over a long period of time. Which then, yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. And yeah, like, it's just one thing that, as I said, we need to make sure that we have multiple options, that's the theme of what we're talking about all the time anyway. Yeah, trial as many products as possible.
Trial as many products as you possibly can. Like, if give another example, if you've need a wheelchair and you go into 2 different wheelchair outlets, shops, distributors, if you go into a workshop with one chair versus going into a distributor which has got multiple chairs for you to try, are you going to go to the one with just one product and try to make that chair fit you, or are you going to go and to the workshop that's got multiple chairs in it and multiple cushions and multiple options for backrest and so forth, and get the product that can be customized to meet your needs? And when we're sitting in the car, my philosophy on this is that you've got to try the things that work best for your situation, not just the one product that's in the car.
Yeah, exactly. And what you're finding now, because of the nature of what's happening with NDIS, and also just people wanting to do the right thing, this facilities are opening up more and more. Like what you were saying about the chair, it's all over our social media. Sunrise Medical 2 weeks ago, they opened up a facility near their warehouse, where you can go there as an OT and trial absolutely everything possible, you know, with all different variations and so on. And a bit of a shameless plug, we've got an automotive car there, but aside from that, the point is that it's a one-stop shop for trialing, but you actually can't buy anything there. So, and I like that, because it's taking out and we've set up a similar facility here for the last couple of years. There's no buying decision. It's just purely a medical and functional decision. So and then you find the right product, and then you leave, and then you start the buying of that product. And I think that following that model, and we're starting to see that, and we're sort of supporting that around the country with more and more products. I think following that model is going to be a lot better for the community, for the NDIS, and for the users, and even for industry. You know, like as we mentioned before, most of us are here trying to do the right thing, and as we mentioned a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about the chariot, like if I hear stories about people where the chariot doesn't work, that's not a good thing. Like, we want them to know like what it's for and then use it. You know, we don't want them to buy a product just and have it sitting in a shelf somewhere. You know, it's and if it is, then it must be the wrong thing, and we need to relook at it. And that's the same with the hand controls, and that's the same with everything. You know, so go out there and trial as many products. But one thing I actually wanted to, I guess, segue to and highlight a little bit is, I guess, share a little bit of insight on this hand control that he did have. And sort of break it down a bit anyway, because it is probably one of the most common hand controls on the market, the push-pull one. It's definitely, I call it the classic traditional hand control. It's kind of like been around for a long while. Yeah. I think, again, we try not to mention too many companies, but I will mention the guys up the road from here, PME, Problem Management Engineering, and Bill, more from a high respect point of view. So they've been around. Bill, like, I've known him literally since I was a kid. And he's been pivotal in developing such products for the community here. And the traditional push-pull hand control that we see today, and we use in Australia today, a lot of that design comes from PME's designs and ideas.
Oh, he's got so many people on the road. A massive respect to Bill and his team out there. He's and whenever we have conferences, functions, he's always the first person I invite, because he's got that that history and that experience. And I guess so that PME design has kind of been one of the main designs in Australia for 30 odd years, you know, plus years. And so that's why we call it kind of the traditional classic design. But now that things have evolved and there's a lot more options on the market, it's kind of, I guess, it's still there, but there's more options. So other people are doing things, but it is a very, very popular product, and we see it probably in most of the cars that we see. And so it'd probably be a good idea to explain a little bit about how it works and so on. So yeah, well, it's also, look, cars have come a long way. I just want to touch on that point as well. Cars have come a long way since this push-pull hand control was first invented, and it, like you said, let's touch on how it works. It's designed around the old pull cable type of accelerator, where the accelerator pushes down, it pulls a cable which goes through to the engine to make the engine rev, and it was designed around that. I mean, Ali, you're the engineer. You could probably talk more about how it works than what I can.
Yeah. Look, basically, very simple, very old school. Just a straight rod that mounts to the steering column somewhere, and basically connects with one little connection to the two pedals. And yeah, as you said, the older vehicles, they had cables, they're much more mechanical, and this full-on mechanical system was built for that mechanical system. You know, it was one mechanical system working with another one. But now you've got all electronics, all different sensitivities, plastics. Just the virtue of bloody plastics is the problem. So in the old days, the steering column of the vehicle was exposed. You know, now it's covered in plastic, and it's just like centimeters and centimeters of plastic. Like, how do we even just mount that hand control is very difficult. And then on top of that,
the amount of electronics that are in there, the amount of electronics that are hidden in the steering columns now.
Then you've got airbags, knee airbags, airbags coming out of bloody everywhere, and sensors everywhere. And so whilst the mechanical stuff somewhat can work, and you can make it and you can modify it to work, it's becoming very, very challenging to get it to work in that way. And so it's just to relook at the system and whilst that hand control, that mechanical hand control works well, there is a lot of things that are working a lot better for these modern vehicles, particularly with all of these plastics and electronics and things like that around it, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Look, we say it in every episode, don't we? And it's been the major reflection on this one is get out there and trial it. There's lots of products around. Mobility engineering is one place where you can go and trial all of these things, where there's lots of different hand controls. And don't get us wrong, the two of us don't have every product available. That's for sure. There's multiple products out there that other suppliers have as well, and where we refer on to other people if the product's not appropriate as well. So make sure that the products that we don't have aren't appropriate, I should say. So make sure that you get out there and try all these things. Make sure that you think about the long-term impact on muscles. If it's hurting or it's niggling when you're trialing it, then that's a bigger story. And you need to go exploring why. Could it be adjusted? Or do I need to look at a different product? And if you're steering around a corner and you're fatiguing in your left shoulder because of hand controls on the right hand side and a spinner knob on the left, then maybe it's not going to be the right product for you, and you'll limit the way that you drive. And we don't want people compromising safety either. I'm a big person for safety. We don't want people compromising safety. They can't put their indicator on, or they can't, they're overusing cruise control, or they're taking their hand off of the hand control to be able to assist with steering. We don't want people compromising safety either.
No, that's the most important thing. I mean, that takes me back to the interview with Nev. You know, think about your community. Yeah. Think about not just yourself and what's easy for yourself, but how you're affecting everybody else. And I guess the one thing I wanted to, probably as we sort of wrap up, one thing I really wanted to highlight and I guess really promote the whole idea of trialing and getting out there and not giving up is, I guess, look at Matt's life. I mean, he is 21. Mm-hmm. He's got a girlfriend. He's living by himself in Castle Hill in a nice apartment. He's doing talks all around schools. He's got a job. I know he's also, from knowing him personally, he's doing a bit of trading online. So he's a very active member of the community, and he's living a very happy life. And he said very clearly that if he didn't have that car, mm-hmm. then none of this would have been possible. Not the girlfriend, not the job, not living by himself. And I know this for a fact because I've known him privately outside of this, and I knew him when he was living with his parents, and he was so excited to be moving out because he's got the car and he's got the ability to get in and out and so on and so forth. And it's, to me, that those few facts should really be the big selling point of going out there and trialing a product. Go and try some products, and you can have so much more independence potentially. You know,
mate, you live in Sydney, and Matt lives in Sydney, and the transport there in Sydney with your trains and infrastructure around public transport is massive compared to where I live here in Adelaide. We've got trains, but there's only 5 or now 6 lines on the train line. So there's not that many trains available, and buses are hard to get onto with wheelchairs. So without a car in Adelaide, it's really, really limiting. And look, we'll reflect on it again. We'll reflect on it almost every episode, is the NDIS and how that is opening up options for people. Matt put his hand controls in before NDIS and paid for them, or his dad paid for them for him. And that may have been a limiting factor on cost in regards to how much was able to be afforded. And he put in hand controls that will work, but also what could be afforded at the time. With NDIS available, this really is wonderful times for people within disabilities. We hear that there's negatives about it, with we're learning and opening out and all those type of things, but without the NDIS, for many people, they would be stuck at home. And hand controls, spinner knobs, hand controls and spinner knobs with the appropriate equipment in it as well. So electronic indicators, electronic accelerators, those type of things as well, can really get people out in the community, but get them out in an appropriate and safe manner as well.
All right. That's it for this episode. Thank you very much for joining us and listening in. And once again, a huge thank you to Matt Caruana, again, for joining us for the last episode and talking through his journey. And thank you to Brad for your time today and your reflections and your thoughts.
Yeah, just for people that want to catch up with Matt, one of the best places to do that is his Instagram account. Matt Shares, MATTSHARES. Go and check him out. He's a top guy. And if you want to ask him anything about driving or about how he's changed his life around, he's very happy for you to get in contact with him. Massive takeaways out of this one, like we have in most of our episodes at the moment. I'm really enjoying this journey with you, Ali, and exploring people's life and driving around with disabilities.
Yeah, it's really great, and it's awesome. And another thing which Matt mentioned, which I'll give him a plug, if you're out there, he's coaching other young people, and he's doing it a little bit pro bono, and he's trying to charge a bit of money, but also basically coaching young people to help them get better, so hit him up, put him in touch with other people that are struggling. He's more than happy to help. It helps him and it helps the community. And as we say in every episode, if you have any queries about what you can do, and we've said it multiple times here, what will work for you, get in contact with your local OT or mobility dealer and set yourself up with a trial. Trials really do put you in that driver's seat. And we definitely covered that today.
Yeah, we'll be repeating it many more times as well, I'm sure. All right. See you later, everybody.
See you guys.
If you like what you have heard, make sure you like, rate, and subscribe. It makes a massive difference. If you or anyone you know would like to share your story about driving with a disability, make sure you reach out to us through the socials. Just search for us. For more information and the resources mentioned in this episode, then go to the Drivable Podcast on Facebook and tune into the next episode. See you next time.